I want to welcome to the program right now NRA-ILA Media liason Amy Hunter is with us on the program. Amy, how are you this afternoon?
I'm wonderful, Cam. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you very much for coming on the program. There is so much to talk about and speak about. Just looking at the NRA's Twitter feed today, you got a link to this New Republic piece that we were just talking about. You say, this is what our opponents want. And then you just link the headline. It's time to ban guns. Yes, all of them. Amy, you've seen the stories. I've seen the stories this week. Oh, the NRA's paranoid. They're so crazy. Keep telling people want to take away their guns. We've had the New York Times front page editorial, first time in 95 years. You got to turn them all in for the common good. And if not, we're going to have to take them from you. You've got a George Washington University professor at the Huffington Post calling for domestic disarmament. You've got the New Republic, which, again, is not a fly-by-night publication on the left. They're calling for banning all guns. This is, look, we really haven't heard such vociferous calls for the complete banning of firearms in this country in, ever that I can remember.
Yeah, the noise does seem to be getting louder, doesn't it? I mean, it seems like every day I turn on my computer or my phone or look at the newspaper, and there's some other story out there that's, uneducated or not really understanding the issue. I wish these journalists would take more time and reach out to us, and we could educate them on some of these issues.
I don't think so. Look, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. I think that there are good journalists out there who do want to be educated, but there are, there are an awful lot right now, Amy, who just want to tell us how they feel, and they really don't want to learn, and that's sad. But again, we just have to keep doing what we're doing and trying to get the word out with folks about any number of issues. We've seen this support for gun control drop, support for a semi-auto ban at 44% in the New York Times latest poll. That's the lowest that they've ever recorded it. And again, Amy, this comes at a time in which there has been this sort of nonstop assault on the idea that we have a right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't appear to be working. It really appears to be backfiring. The more these anti-gun activists talk, the more Americans are interested in protecting this right.
Yeah, in fact, I think the most recent poll we saw was a Rasmussen poll. I don't know if you'd seen that, and it was something like 61% of the country opposes more gun control. And that's, that's a big majority of the country. And then you've got these Democratic candidates, really, it's reaching a fever pitch, all this gun control talk, and it just seems so out of tune with what the country, what the majority of the country wants and what we hear at the what we encounter at the NRA. So it just seems to get more and more, the conversation seems to get further and further away from the reality of how people feel in America.
I think that's exactly right. And I think part of this, I think the anti-gun folks bring a lot of this on themselves. I disagree with their position, but it seems in many cases, Amy, they're incapable of making and stating their case honestly. You look at the terror watch list legislation. And The Hill had a piece yesterday talking about how the proponents of this legislation keep talking about the no-fly list, which has about, 47,000 names on it. But the legislation that they want to use to ban people from buying a firearm has over 1 million names on it. It's the broader terror watch list. It's not just the no-fly list, which means that there are people who could fly, who can fly, that the Obama administration and some people like Senator Feinstein want to say they can't own a gun. They're not even capable of having a conversation about denying people their constitutional rights without due process, honestly.
Yeah. This one's been a really, for me personally, for some reason, this one really gets me because there's really so many problems with this issue.
Mm-hmm.
But at the core of this, there's two things going on here. Number one is people are being misled about what actually happens when someone on this list goes into a gun store to buy a gun. The president was on and in his address to the nation over the weekend, and he made it sound as though people on the terror watch list can just walk willy-nilly into a gun store and purchase a firearm, and no one's the wiser. And that couldn't be further from the truth. The processes that are in place have been in place for 10 years or for longer than that. And in fact, anyone who's on this watch list, if they go into a gun store, They are, submitted as anyone is to go through a background check. Once they do that, if it's found that they're on the terror watch list, there's a delay put on their purchase, and that information is then sent to the FBI. The FBI then comes in and takes a close look at this purchase, and first they decide if it needs to be, first they see if there's a reason why this person is prohibited. Mm-hmm. If there's a legal reason why this person cannot purchase a firearm, the purchase doesn't go through. And if there's not a legal reason, then the FBI surveys and watches them as they purchase this gun, and it's a surveillance and a tracking and a monitoring tool. It's a watch list that's used as a tool to help the FBI in their investigations, and that's exactly what it's done. I mean, it's really, American people are really being misled by some of their lawmakers on this one.
When you've got the NRA, the LA Times, and Think Progress, not to mention the New York Times from 2014.
Oh, I know.
All on the same page talking about the trouble with this. It's worth noting that this is not a left, right, or even a pro-gun, anti-gun divide here. This really is a question of what our rights mean, how much power and authority do we want to give up to the government, and whether or not things like, due process of law actually mean anything in this country.
Well, I mean, that's actually what really gets to me about this, too. I mean, you've got to think about the nature of this list. I mean, it is an arbitrary, vast, secret list. And, mid-level bureaucrats can add people's name to this list. I mean, it's grown. The ACLU estimates it grows 20,000 names per month. It's anywhere from, it could be up to, 1.5 million names on it. And just in my personal experience, I know people who have been erroneously put on this list, and I think, who was it? It was one of the presidential candidates came out. Carly Fiorini was telling a story recently about her husband's best friend who was erroneously on this list. And, I mean, it speaks to the fundamental system. The government cannot keep a secret list of its citizens and just willy-nilly put names on it with no accountability and no transparency whatsoever, and then deny them fundamental constitutional rights. And just like you said, the New York Times has come out against this, this type of thing as well. Of course, not when it was about guns, but
right.
But again, this sweeps left, right. This is the whole political spectrum, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy, listen, unfortunately, we are almost out of time, but thank you very much for coming on the program today. I hope we can do this again soon.
Yes, thank you, Cam. It's always a pleasure.
Well, and thank you and thank everybody at NRA-ILA for all of the work that you all are doing. I know it's been a very busy week, and it's going to continue to be, I think, a very busy election year, but we certainly appreciate everything you all are doing over there.
Well, thank you, Cam. You too.
Amy Hunter with us, NRA-ILA Media Liaison here on NRA News, Cam and Company.